Please rise. Municipal Court for the City of Stoughton is now in session. The Honorable Matthew T. Rothy presiding.
Please be seated. Please silence all cell phones. The conversation must cease at this time. The sign said juvenile, this is adult, isn't
It is, yes. Where did it say that?
it? Coming into the...
Oh, boy.
We'll call the court to order at this time. My name is Matt Rothy. I'm the Stoughton Municipal Judge. Covers the cities of Stoughton, Townsend, Dunkirk, Pleasant Springs, and Rutland. I'd like to go through some of the procedures we follow in the courtroom. These procedures should have been available to you in the pamphlet on the podium as you entered. Tonight's initial appearance tonight, we'll call cases one at a time. What we're doing tonight is taking pleas. Your three plea options are guilty, no contest, or not guilty. If you enter a no contest or guilty plea, I'll review your citation, and if there's sufficient evidence, find you guilty and impose an appropriate forfeiture. A plea of no contest is similar to a guilty plea, but if your conviction arising from no contest plea cannot be used against you in a subsequent hearing. Let me explain that. Say if you're involved in a traffic accident, you receive a citation for that. If you enter a no contest plea, they can't use that no contest plea to decide to sue you for damages later. They can use the fact that you were found guilty, but not the fact you admitted to anything. Forfeitures range from $20 to $1,000. However, almost all are within the $50 to $200 range. The state mandates we add cost to your forfeiture. For example, a $50 forfeiture will result in a total fine to you of $124. Okay. I typically grant you 30 days to pay the forfeiture. However, if you need more time, please let me know. My options the court's options to collect for these citations are to intercept your taxes, do estate collections, suspend your driver's license. I'd rather not do that. If you need time to pay, just let me know and we can set up a payment plan. If you enter a not guilty plea, we'll set this case over for a pretrial conference with the city attorney. Pretrial conference, you can call into the city attorney's office and see if you can resolve this over the phone. That date will be on September 2nd, 2020. What did I say? Oh, September 7th, 2022. Sorry, I'm having difficulties reading today. So September 7th, 2022. It's on Wednesday. Court will be the time. If you make sure that you appear at the pretrial conference, and then it's a chance to resolve your case with the city. If you can't resolve it, it comes back to me for a trial. Those of you facing traffic offenses should understand that you'll lose demerit points upon conviction of most such offenses. If you lose 12 or more points in the year, your license will be suspended for a period of time. You'll also be fined. I'd like you to be aware of some of your rights before entering your plea. You have a right to ask for continuance. This means that you have a right to ask for another court date, either consult with an attorney or another reason. We'll set another initial appearance date. You also have a right to a trial. Please remember your rights when considering your plea. Any OWIs tonight? If you're facing an OWI, you have a right to request a jury trial, the circuit court upon payment of proper fees. All our cases will be heard in this court with the right to appeal my ruling to the circuit court. Okay, that concludes my opening remarks. We take people on a first-come, first-served basis. When I call your name, you can come up to the podium. The first one will be Will Devine. Good evening, Mr. Devine.
Good evening, Your Honor.
Pull up your reports. I just get this to make sure I get your address. Do I have your correct address on Bonnie Road in Cottage Grove?
That's correct.
Okay. Two citations. One is failure to yield the right-of-way from a stop sign. That citation carries a penalty of $98.80 and 4 demerit points issued your driver's license. Do you understand what failure to yield the right-of-way from a stop sign is?
Yes, I do, Your Honor.
Okay, you don't need me to read the citation or the statute elements to you.
No, thank you.
All right. This forfeiture, like I said, is $98.80. That carries that's a $30 fine plus costs. There's a forfeiture range on this, and I can always go higher or lower. I typically follow the posted amount, but if sufficient reasons are, I can deviate from that. And this is 346.18 subsection 3. The forfeiture range on this is $20 to $50. So you're at 30 plus cost. You're not quite at the minimum, but you come probably halfway through. Do you understand the forfeiture range?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Now, failure to yield the right-of-way from a stop sign. if you're found guilty of that citation, there's a class involved. In the class, it's mandated by the Department of Transportation that if you get convicted of the citation, the DOT requires you to complete this class. If you don't, you'll lose your license will get suspended. So it's outside of my hands. That's just if you get convicted of that offense. In addition, do you have any questions regarding the failure to yield a right-of-way from a stop sign?
No, I do not.
All right. Second citation is failure to stop at a stop sign. That citation carries a penalty of $98.80 and 3 demerit points issued your driver's license. Do you have a probationary license?
I believe I do.
If you get one in when you're 16, it will be up until you're 19. So, let me check your date of birth. Hang on. Give me a minute. Okay. So your date of birth was 2004. Yeah, so you would definitely have a probationary license. So when you have a probationary license, if you're the second citation, the points of 3 would double to 6. First one would be 4, and the next one would be 6. Failure to stop for a stop. So you understand what the elements for that would be?
Yes, Your Honor.
Now that's also $30 plus cost of $98.80. The forfeiture range on this citation is, let's see, $20 to $40. So you're right. It's a low forfeiture range, and you're right in the middle of it. In addition, $346.46. Okay. If you're convicted of the failure to stop at a stop sign or you're found guilty, you do not have to take a class for this citation. So, okay. Any questions regarding the failure to stop at a stop sign?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. So you have a probationary license. You're facing 2 citations, one which will double, and you have to take a mandatory DOT class. I don't have the power to amend these or dismiss one if you plead the other one. So my suggestion would be that you enter a not guilty plea and schedule this for a pretrial conference with the city prosecutor on September 7th, just so your points aren't adversely affected. I don't know. So, yeah, I can review the plea options: not guilty, no contest, or guilty. But that my recommendation would be not. Normally I don't read that, but I would suggest maybe not guilty plea, so you can talk to the prosecutor about some of these citations.
Okay.
Okay. I'll go ahead and enter a not guilty plea on your behalf. I'll give you a notice in just a minute for that. Make sure that you attend a pretrial conference, because if you don't, you'll be found guilty and those penalties will be imposed. The second citation will double, and then you'll also be facing a mandatory class. So make sure that you attend the pretrial conference. Chance to tell your side of the story, bring whatever statements or witnesses might help your case. Make sure that you don't miss it. And that should be it. Once you get the notice, that will take care of it for this evening, unless you have any other questions for me.
I do not, Your Honor.
Okay. So once the bailiff gives you that notice, and the hearing for you has been concluded today. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
That's for both of them.
Sonia Veek? Did I say your name correctly?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Yes, you did.
Ms. Veek, do I have a correct address on County Road A in Stoughton?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Hang on a second there. I got a pop-up screen. How do I get rid of this? There, okay. All right, you've been cited for speeding on a city highway 11 to 15 over. That citation carries a penalty of $98.80 and 4 demerit points issued your driver's license. That's $30 plus costs. I think that's the minimum amount of fine on the speeding citation, but let me check. It's $346.57 for E. 30. Yeah, $30 to $300 is the range. You're at the minimum forfeiture amount of $30 plus costs. You're looking at me quizzically.
So I'll pay, So I'll end up paying $98.80 plus court costs?
No, the $98.80 is the total amount that you pay. The court cost is $30, that
I
gets
see.
multiplied and added, and then it ends up being at $98.80.
Okay.
That's the total amount. Okay. Do you understand what speeding on a city highway is?
Yes, Your
Okay.
Honor.
And it's 11 to 15 over, that's 4 points. There's 3 categories of speeding citation. There's 20 or more over, which is 6, 11 to 19, which is 4, and 1 to 10, which is 3. Now, if you were to enter a not guilty plea and meet with the prosecutor would automatically lower it by 10 miles an hour. I've received permission from the prosecutor's office to make that same offer to you today. So instead of 11 to 15 over, I would reduce it to 1 to 10 over, which would be 3 points instead of 4, same forfeiture. And I grant you 30 days to pay. You understand the 10-mile-an-hour leeway, as I've discussed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, I talked to you about the points, the 10-mile-an-hour leeway, point total. Any questions you have for me?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Now is the time I take your plea. Your 3 plea options are guilty, no contest, or not guilty.
No contest?
And that would be to the 1 to 10 over for 3 points.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, let me read the police report. I want to make sure I have a factual basis for your no contest plea. I have read the police report. I do find a factual basis for your plea. I'll accept your no contest plea and find you guilty of 1 to 10 over, which would be 3 points instead of 4. Okay. Anything you'd like to say before I assign a sentence? How much, 30 days sufficient to pay?
Pay right now?
Okay. I'll give you the receipt, and you can take that down to the dispatch
Okay.
window downstairs.
Thank you, Your
Any other
Honor.
questions for me?
No, thank you.
All right. That takes care of it for this evening. And thank you, Ms. Speak. Gillian Sizey? Size?
Jillian size.
Oh, Jillian Size?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Size, do I have your correct address on Page Street in Stoughton?
Yes.
Okay. You were cited for speeding on a city highway 11 to 15 miles an hour over the limit. That citation carries a penalty of $98.80 and 4 demerit points issued your driver's license. Do you understand what speeding on a city highway is?
Yes, Your Honor.
And you understand that you're being cited for 11 to 15 over?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Now, the forfeiture is $98.80. It's a $30 forfeiture plus cost. That's the minimum forfeiture on this. It can go as high as $300 plus cost. You understand that as well?
Yes, Your Honor.
In addition, I give a 10-mile-an-hour leeway. You were here present in the courtroom, but I'll explain to you as well. If you were to enter a not guilty plea, meet with the prosecutor, they would automatically lower it for 10 miles an hour. They're giving me the same. For courtroom economy, basically the same offer. So when I have these speeding, I always give 10-mile-an-hour leeways. And instead of 11 to 15 over, I would reduce it to 1 to 10 over, which would be 3 points instead of 4. You understand that?
I do, Your Honor.
You understand that the forfeiture would also stay the same at $98.80?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Do you have any questions for me regarding the speeding citation?
No.
All right. Now's the time I take your plea. Well, your 3 plea options are guilty, no contest, or not guilty to speeding 1 to 10 over.
No contest.
You understand with no contest plea, if there's a factual basis in the report, I'll find you guilty?
Yes, Your
All
Honor.
right, let me read the report. I want to make sure I have a factual basis. Do you have an Illinois driver's license?
I used to.
Oh, okay. But you have Wisconsin now?
Yes.
Sometimes Illinois drivers ask me about traffic safety classes, but it's not an option in Wisconsin. So I have reviewed the police report. I do find a factual basis for your plea. I'll accept your no contest plea and find you guilty of speeding 1 to 10 over, total forfeiture of $98.80. You need 30 days to pay?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. We can give you the notice and just make sure that you mail in payment within 30 days. Otherwise, if you don't pay within that time, I have to suspend your driver's license or intercept your taxes, and I don't want to do that. So if you
understand.
need additional time, just let us know. We can always either have a hearing or grant you extra time then. So,
Thank you.
anything else you'd like to say? Tell me regarding the citation?
Nope.
Okay. That will take care. Once the bailiff hands you the notice, that will take care of it for this evening. Then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tien Trung? Did I say your name correctly, Ms. Trung?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. You've been cited for speeding on a city highway 20 to 24 miles an hour over the limit. This citation carries a penalty of 6 points and a total forfeiture of $149.20. The forfeiture range on this is $30 to $300. You are at $70 plus costs. You understand that with the $70 fine ends up being a total forfeiture to you of $149.20. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Do you understand what speeding on a city highway is?
Yeah, I failed
If
to
you
slow
understand
down,
that,
yeah.
that's all you need to tell me then. And that you were cited for 20 to 24 over, you understand that as well?
Yeah, the police officer said he's clocked me at 45.
Okay. So there's 3 tiers of speeding. There's 20 and above, which is 6 points, 11 to 19, which is 4, and 1 to 10, which is 3. I give a 10-mile-an-hour leeway for these. If you were to enter a not guilty plea and speak with the prosecutor, they would also give you a 10-mile-an-hour leeway. I've discussed it with the city attorney's office, and I can make that offer from give you a 10-mile-an-hour leeway from the bench. So if you enter no contest or a guilty plea, I would reduce this to speeding 11 to 19 over. That would result in 4 points rather than 6. Same forfeiture of $149.20. You understand that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I talked to you about the elements, the forfeiture range, and the speeding. Do you have any questions for me?
No.
All right. Now is the time I take your plea. Your 3 plea options are guilty, no contest, or not guilty to speeding 11 to 19 over.
No contest, Your Honor.
Okay. No contest means you're not admitting guilt, but you want it ended tonight. Is that the plea that you would, but you want to resolve the citation
Yeah,
tonight?
because I believe when I called into the court, they said I can either take like a traffic safety class with the attorney or just, so.
Okay. But you still wish to enter a no contest plea tonight?
Yeah.
All right. Let me read the police report. I want to make sure I have a factual basis for your plea. I have reviewed the police report. I do find a factual basis for your plea. I'll accept your no contest plea and find you guilty of speeding 11 to 19 over the limit, which would result in 4 demerit points. I find the fine to be reasonable at $149.20. Ma'am, how long do you need to pay that forfeiture?
I'd like to pay it now so I don't miss the
Okay.
deadline.
Yeah, I'll give you 30 days, but I'll give you a notice. You can take that to the dispatch window downstairs and show them this fine and make payment right at the window then.
Okay, thank you.
So, okay. Anything else you'd like to say before your session terminates?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you for coming in. We'll make sure that we'll give you the forfeiture or the notice, and once you receive that, that will take care of it this evening. Then. Thank you.
So it's like right downstairs.
Oh.
Just like that way around.
If you
Okay.
came in the main door, there's a glass door, so go in there and go up to a window and somebody will help you.
Okay, thank you.
So, Ms. Trung, one more thing I want to tell you. So you mentioned a traffic safety class. Traffic safety classes are available through the Department of Transportation website. Typically what happens if you complete the traffic safety class, you can get 3 of your points back. You can do it once every couple of years, I believe. It's something separate from this.
Oh, so I would be able to reduce it by 3 versus 2.
Yeah, actually, you get 3 points back, so I've given you this citation was 4. If you get 3 back from the traffic safety class, usually what happens is that you get 3 points back. Is that on the traffic
That's
safety?
fine.
Yeah, and here's a handout for that information.
Oh, so I can take a traffic safety class and get it reduced by 3 more points?
Correct.
And how would I go and go about doing that? Do I just contact the city attorney?
No, you would not contact the city attorney. It's right there on the form that we gave you.
Oh, okay, so I would
Yeah.
just follow this?
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
then I could get my points reduced by 3 points?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
I go this way?
Let's see. Stacy Johnson? Ms. Johnson, do I have your correct address on Jackson Street in Stoughton?
Yes, sir.
All right. You received a citation for retail theft, intentionally taking less than $500. This citation carries a penalty of $187. That's $100 plus costs. The forfeiture range on this is $50 to $1,000, so you're not quite at the minimum, but you're on the lower end of the scale. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, for retail theft, intentionally taking less than $500, do you understand the elements for that citation?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. In addition, my notes say Walmart. Walmart does not request restitution, but you aware that a lot of, you know what restitution is?
Yes.
Okay, so if a merchant can always file suit against you for the value of the merchandise. Walmart has made it known that they don't seek restitution of this course, but they might seek other recourses. Do you understand that as well?
Mm-hmm.
Is that yes?
Yes.
Okay. We're being recorded, and sometimes the audio won't pick up when you nod your head or say.
Yes, I understand.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so any other questions for me regarding this retail theft citation?
If I ask for a continuance, will I be able to try to get a hold of the city attorney before my court date?
Odds are they probably won't have a copy of the report, and they won't be able to take a look at it. So my suggestion was, if you want to speak to the city attorney, just enter a not guilty plea, and then we'll schedule that matter for a pretrial conference then.
Okay.
That would be a chance. And then if you say you need more time to pay or need more time to clear it up, that can be a negotiating point for you, that you just need more time for whatever reason, so.
Okay.
Okay. Is that what you want to do?
Yes, not
Okay.
guilty.
We'll go ahead and enter a not guilty plea. Pretrial conference will be scheduled for September 7th. Just make sure, it'll be a phone call. Basically, just make sure that you make the phone call as where indicated. And when you do that, that sets forth just the rule. Now, it's a chance to tell your side of the story, or, basically negotiate on behalf of yourself. So have whatever statements or other factors that would favor you, be ready to present that then.
Okay.
If you can't resolve it, it comes back to me for court, but if you can resolve it, it'll come back to me, and typically I approve the resolutions then.
Okay.
Any questions?
No, Your Honor, that's
All right.
it.
Once you receive the notice, that will take care of it this evening then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Same, he came in late. 11, okay.
Rodney Lemon? Mr. Lemon, do I have your correct address on Jackson Street in Stoughton?
Correct.
Okay. You've been cited for retail theft, intentionally taking less than $500. Do you understand what retail theft, intentionally taking less than $500 is?
Yes.
Okay. You don't need me to review the elements with you?
No.
All right. This citation carries a penalty of $187. It's a $100 fine plus court costs for a total forfeiture of $187. The range on this is $50 to $1,000. So you're not at the minimum, but you're at the low end of the range. You understand that as well? Is that a yes? No. Okay. In addition to that, this is, my notes say it's a Walmart case. Walmart does not request restitution to this court, but they may request restitution under the law. Do you understand what restitution is?
Yes.
Okay. You're aware of that, so talk to the fine, the forfeiture range. Any questions for me?
No. How much would the fine be?
It'd be $187.
$187. It can't be lowered in any way.
If you want to meet with the prosecutor, you could always do that. If you give me reasons why, if you can always enter no contest and guilty plea or suggest a lower fine, I could listen to what you would have to say.
Yes, I would request for a lower fine.
Okay. All right. You could either meet with the prosecutor or you could request a lower fine with me as well.
Oh, yeah, I can tell you what happened.
Okay, before you do that, the prosecutor's not here. If you tell me what happened, it's not fair to the prosecutor that I'm hearing this. The prosecutor usually has to be present. It's called an ex parte contact. So if you want to tell me what happened and I can reduce the fine, then what would occur is that you would have to enter a no contest or guilty plea. I've reviewed the police report. There was a factual basis for that. Then I find you guilty, then you can tell me why the fine could be lowered.
Okay,
Is that what you want to do?
yes,
Okay. So you want to enter probably a no contest plea? Is that my understanding?
yes.
Okay. So if you want to go ahead and say, just affirm that you want to take a no contest plea?
I would take a no contest plea.
Okay. Let me read the police report. I want to make sure I have a factual basis for your plea. I have reviewed the police report. I do find a factual basis for your plea. I'll accept your no contest plea and find you guilty. Okay, you wanted to tell me why that you believe the forfeiture should be lowered?
Yes.
Please do so.
Well, recently I just got custody of my grandson. He was in an accident to where he drowned, and the reason why I was doing what I did is because I was trying to get diapers and things for him that he needed that I wasn't able to get at the time.
Okay. And you said he almost drowned?
No, he drowned. Now I have custody of him. His mother is being trialed. She's going to jail. And
Is the grandchild still alive?
yes, he's still alive. He's brain damage.
Okay.
And I'm taking care of a disabled child at the moment.
Okay. Okay. And you just didn't have the money, but he needed the diapers and so forth. So.
Yes.
Okay. If I reduce the the minimum forfeiture would be $50 plus costs, would result in a total forfeiture of $124. Would you be able to pay that?
Yes.
Okay. There's also what's called an indigency hearing, meaning that you have no assets and would be in the poverty level. I could have an additional hearing presented by the prosecutor where you could have the fine eliminated. Do you want to pay a reduced fine, or would you like to have an indigency hearing?
I can have an indigency hearing.
Okay. So we'll schedule this for an indigency hearing, and that the poverty level is basically you're not working and you're making less than, for how many people in your household beside you and your grandchild?
5.
5, okay. It's typically, and I don't know it off the top of my head, but typically 10,000 for a single. It usually goes up by about 1,000 for every person. So if you're making under $15,000, the court could have an indigency hearing to determine if you were below the poverty level. And if you're below the poverty level, then there would be no fine. But you'd have to bring proof that you are below the poverty line, either that you're receiving assistance or some other proof that the court could review.
Okay, that's fine. That's no problem.
Okay.
I'll send him a form that he needs to complete and then get it scheduled.
Okay, we'll send you a form at your address to complete and then mail it back to us, and then we'll schedule it for a hearing. So I'm not going to fine you right now. We'll wait for the indigency hearing to be scheduled then.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right, they'll take care of us for the evening. We'll mail you the forms.
I can give it this.
We can give you the guilty, what you've been found guilty of, but obviously there won't be any forfeiture owing until we have an indigency hearing then.
Okay, thank you.
So we have a trial at 6.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they were trying to settle it, but
Okay. I was thinking, we haven't had a trial in a while, so.
no.
Art, you want to review the rest of these?
Sure.
All right. Okay. Marcus Eduardo Barr. Bond forfeiture. What we're doing now is just going through the rest of the initial appearances. Currently, there's nobody present in the courtroom, but I'll still review these. Brent Benton, a default judgment. Shirley Bewick is a bond forfeiture. Andrew Bonney is a default judgment. Alexandria Bridges is a default judgment. William Delahanty is a bond forfeiture. Richard Dement is a default judgment. Servando Valdez Diaz is a bond forfeiture. Ulysses Dinkins is a default judgment. Daniel Donahue is a default judgment. Christine Dressler is a default judgment. Derry Essie is a default judgment on both citations. Timothy Michael David Gilmore is a bond forfeiture. Carrie Hanger is a default judgment. Deborah Hill is a default judgment. Clara Hughes is a bond forfeiture. Aria Rose Indelicio Yellowbird is a default judgment. Avery Lamberti is a default judgment on both citations. Anthony Lee is a default judgment on all three citations. Letitia Lema Montague is a bond forfeiture. Derek James Lemke is a bond forfeiture. Heather Mackey is a default judgment. Luke Milor is a default judgment. Jeffrey Messeberg is a default judgment. Tyler Marshall is a default judgment. Todd Nelson is a default judgment. Matthew Nichols is a default judgment. Alicia Olivius is a bond forfeiture. Alexander Ray Person is a default judgment. Donald Petty is a default judgment. Colin Pfluger is a bond forfeiture. Maria Pegram, is a default judgment. Noberto Quinones Cortez is a bond forfeiture. Beverly Rush is a bond forfeiture. Hayden Roberts is a bond forfeiture. William Roy Ortiz is a default judgment. Cesar Ruiz Martinez is a bond forfeiture. Arik Sefrud is a default judgment on both citations. Roxanne Seidlitz is a bond forfeiture. Emre Sure is a default judgment. Jane Sproul, I have a notation on here, dismissed at the request of the city. Upon the city's motion to dismiss, the court hereby dismisses the citation. Jonathan Stallman is a default judgment. Melissa Subi is a default judgment. Donald Swenson is a default judgment. Casey Joe Swenson Adams is a default judgment on both citations. All three citations. Rebecca True is a bond forfeiture. Joanne Cherner is a bond forfeiture. Abby Van Galder is a default judgment on both citations. Michael Walmer is a default judgment on both citations. Oh, let me take a look. Okay, take a look at this. So on the refusal, I will revoke the, let me verify it first. Actually, let's clear the docket first. Michael Webb of bond forfeiture and Craig Zimmerman bond forfeiture. Case we recall Michael Walmer. Okay, find him, default him on the operating law suspension and impose the base amount of citation of $124 and 3 points. The OWI. I'll find that it was unreasonable refusal and impose a one-year driver's license revocation along with a $50 forfeiture or $50 IID requirement. Mandatory alcohol and drug assessment and 6 demerit points issued as driver's license. I'll impose a forfeiture on the OWI. I've already said the 861 plus a $50 forfeiture would be $911. And then, let's see, well, actually we won't know the blood alcohol content, so let's see, IID $50, 861, AOD 6 points, and 1 year driver's license suspension. Okay, and it's so ordered. Oh, I put a line there. Do I need to sign this? Just
Yeah, you're at the bottom.
Oh, that's the defendant's signature. It just says not present.
That's the defendant, or did I do that wrong?
Yeah.
Oh, by the court. Okay, I'll redo these. I have.
Redo them. Just I'll sign them when we're.
I have
I'll sign
your
them.
signature.
Okay.
on the-
Yep. Go ahead and forward that on to the DOT. Okay, it's so ordered. All right. What's that?
It's It's not a good day.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had one of those yesterday. Today was much better. So we have 20 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. I think unless we have any type of motions or anything like that, or motions are open. Okay. What I'll do is we'll adjourn court at this time, and court will reconvene at 6 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the court's returned to session. The court will call City of Stoughton versus Robert Wills. Please state your appearances, starting with the city.
Isaac Brodke on behalf of the City of Stoughton.
And you are you Mr. Wills?
Hi, sir.
Can you hear me okay?
I can, now I can. Yeah.
I will make sure I speak into the microphone then.
Okay, thanks, man. I really struggle here, and I do, man.
Okay, if you can't hear me, just let me know.
All right.
Okay,
That's plenty loud enough, though. I turned my hearing aids up to kind of max.
okay, so, but you can hear me okay?
I sure can,
Okay.
thank you.
I'll note the appearance of Robert Wills, and we're here for a failure to yield while making a left-hand turn trial. Is that the city's understanding?
Yes, it is, Your Honor, and as you previously ordered, we did amend that citation from a failure to yield pursuant to Wisconsin Statute Section 346.18 sub 2 to Wisconsin Statute Section 346.18 sub 7 sub 8.
That was sub 7, sub A as in apple?
Yes.
Okay. Handed the order. All right. So what this means, Mr. Willis, is the city has to prove the case of failure to yield while entering an alley or driveway from highway. Is that your understanding as well?
Correct, I do.
Okay. Do you know the elements of entering a failure to yield while entering an alley or driveway from a highway?
Did I know what?
Do you know the elements, what makes up the citation?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Well,
but let me
I believe so.
let me read that for everybody's benefit then.
Okay.
Okay. It is 346.18 subsection 7, subsection A. So let me make sure I turn to the right page for that. So 346.18 says general rules of right-of-way. Number 7 states as follows: entering alley or driveway from highway. The operator of any vehicle intending to turn to the left into an alley or private driveway across the path of any vehicle approaching from the opposite direction shall yield the right-of-way to the vehicle. That was subsection A. Does that help your understanding, Mr. Willis?
Yes,
Okay.
sir, it does. Yes,
Now-
sir, it does.
All right. So now that we've agreed that that's the correct citation, is the city prepared to proceed to trial this evening?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Willis, are you prepared to proceed to a trial this evening?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay, so let me explain the trial rules to you. So we're conducting a trial. The city has its burden to by clear, satisfactory, and convincing evidence that they have to prove all the elements that I just read.
Sure.
Okay. Now they will call witnesses, and the city will conduct what's called a direct examination. They'll ask open-ended questions, and the witnesses will then answer the questions as indicated. Now, you have the right to cross-examine the city's witnesses. Do you know what that means? You can ask them leading questions or questions suggestive of answers. If either question you can either object to questions or the city can object to questions. So when the city is done with their witnesses, then they'll rest their case, and then you have the opportunity to present any evidence or no evidence. So, and that would include your own testimony and a testimony of any other witnesses. Do you understand that as well?
Sure, I do.
Okay. So at the conclusion of that, I'll close the evidence, and then the city will have a right to a closing argument. Then you have a right to a closing argument. It's not evidence, but it's a summary of the case about, and each side will present why they believe that they should prevail in this trial. You understand that?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay, and at the end, the city gets the final word or rebuttal to discuss with you, because they have the burden of proof. They have to present the evidence to a clear, satisfactory, and convincing standard to me.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and then there's also an opening statement, which the city could make an opening statement just summarizing the facts, or you can make an opening statement before the trial as well.
Oh, okay.
Do you have any questions regarding our trial procedures?
No, sir, I don't.
Okay.
If I do, can I throw a flag up?
Yeah, or you can just say point of clarification, and I can step in and answer the questions then
Okay,
for you.
thank you.
All right. Would the city like to make an opening statement?
Your Honor, the city will forego its opening statement.
Okay.
And proceed to evidence.
Okay. Mr. Willis, would you like to make an opening statement?
What's, you know,
A summary of why you believe you're not guilty.
a reason why I'm not guilty?
Yeah. Not
Okay.
testimony, but just a summary of it.
Okay, well, the only statement I really have to make is when I made that turn, I was at a dead stop and watched that fella from 6 to 8 car lengths smash into my truck.
Okay, okay.
All right,
I'll
that's a
keep that in
statement I
mind then.
have.
So- Okay, the city can call its first witness.
Your Honor, the city calls Sergeant Robert Miller to the stand.
Okay. Sergeant Miller, you want to raise your right hand and repeat after me. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right. Please be seated and state and spell your name for the record.
Sure, it's Robert Miller, RobertMiller.
Okay, you may question the witness.
Thank you, Mr. Miller, and good evening. Excuse me, Sergeant Miller. Sergeant Miller, where do you work?
Currently, I work for the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources.
And what is your role?
Conservation warden
And before there, where did you work?
for the City of Stoughton Police Department.
And how long were you employed by the city of Stoughton?
I was hired in 2014.
And how long did you work?
Let's do the math here. About 7 years.
Until it looks like 2021?
Yep.
Thank you. Now, what was the training required for your role at the SPD?
Training would have been field training. I can't remember how many weeks, but it's, I think, at least a couple-month process. Prior to that, you also have to go through the police academy to be hired.
And you completed the field training in the police academy?
Correct.
Now, while you were in your training or during your years of experience, were you trained at all in responding to collisions?
Yes.
And could you please describe that training?
Yep, there's basic training during the academy and then also just on-the-job training. And there's also performing investigations of numerous crashes.
And during your role at the Stoughton Police Department, had you responded to any collisions?
Yes, I have.
Do you have an estimate of how many?
I would say probably around 50, I would say.
Sergeant Miller, normally I'd be able to hear you okay, but I think the defendant's having trouble hearing.
Oh,
so if you
sure.
want-
Yep, let me get it closer here.
Mr. Willis, are you able to hear his testimony?
What was that, sir? What?
Were you able to hear are you able to hear his
Not
testimony?
hearing him very well, but
Okay.
enough that we can get by. He don't have to go back and repeat or nothing. Or
Okay,
anything
so-
like that. I'm catching enough of the words and I'm kind of understanding what's going on.
Okay, I've instructed him to put the microphone closer to his lip. I could hear him fine, but I realize that you're having trouble hearing a little bit, so
Thank you.
I've instructed him to speak directly into the
Yeah,
microphone.
'cause
there.
this is pretty interesting. I need to hear, I really do need to hear what's going on
Okay.
with this fellow. Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, Mr. Willis.
Sergeant Miller, just as a point of clarification, what were your roles at the Stoughton Police Department?
When I left, I was the patrol sergeant.
And how
What?
long were you,
What was
He
his?
said he was a patrol sergeant.
Oh, okay, okay.
and how long were you in that role?
Oh, 3 years.
So from 2018 to 2021?
Correct.
Now, were you employed by the Stoughton Police Department on July 11th, 2020?
Yes,
Do you recall if you were on duty that night?
I do recall that I was.
And do you recall any dispatch calls that day?
I do.
Did you respond to any at early evening?
Yes, we responded to a crash.
And do you recall the location of the incident?
Yes, it was on Highway 51 near the O'Reilly Auto Parts store.
And Highway 51 in Stoughton?
Correct.
Now, I'm going to show you what is marked as Exhibit 1. And Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Certainly. Okay, so Mr. Willis, Mr. Willis, he's given you a document that's marked 1 on it. He intends to introduce this into evidence as Exhibit 1.
Okay. I'm just trying to, it's from the top.
Well, no, that's okay. You'll be allowed to ask questions regarding the officer regarding his exhibits.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Now, Sergeant Miller, I just handed you what's marked as Exhibit 1. What is it?
Appears to be a view of where the accident would have occurred.
Now, if you may, and Your Honor, may I approach the witness again?
Yes. And you have permission to approach the witnesses. You don't need to keep asking, so I'll grant you permission.
Thank you. Can you mark on that exhibit where O'Reilly's Auto Parts is?
Yes. Really white top building there, that's a square.
Now, was there any construction going on that summer on Highway 51?
Yes, there was.
Now, do you recall any evidence of that construction that may be reflected on this? Excuse me, may I rephrase here? Were there any orange barriers set up on Highway 51?
Yes, there was.
Now, could you mark where the orange barriers would be?
Yep, I could try.
Now, so during the summer of 2020, Highway 51, excuse me, let me rephrase. Do you recall any signage on the road?
I cannot recall.
Now, setting aside the exhibit for a moment, when you arrived at O'Reilly's, were you in a marked squad car?
I would have been in an unmarked squad, excuse me.
Were you in uniform?
I was, yes.
And what did you see when you arrived at O'Reilly's?
I observed 2 vehicles near the entrance of the parking lot from 51 that appeared to have damage to both vehicles.
And could you describe kind of the road conditions of that day, or the conditions generally?
Yes, so 51 was under construction, so the eastbound lanes were shut down completely. It's normally a 4-lane highway, so there's 2-way traffic in the westbound lanes separated by orange barrier that were probably spaced roughly, I would say, maybe a foot apart each.
And when you arrived, you saw the 2 vehicles. Could you please describe those vehicles?
I can't remember what they look like off the top of my head.
Do you recall any features of the vehicles?
I do not know.
Were the owners of the vehicles present?
They were, yes.
And who were they?
Mr. Wills here, and then another subject that I do not know the name of.
And did you speak to anyone at the scene?
I did, yes.
Who did you speak to?
Mr. Wills here.
And Mr. Willis, could you describe Mr. Willis for the record?
He's wearing a cream-colored shirt and blue jeans.
You're Mr. Willis?
Yes, I did.
Okay, the court will find that
Right.
the court will find that the witness identified you, Mr. Willis, for the record.
Oh, okay.
And do you recall your conversation with Mr. Willis?
Yes.
And what did he tell you?
He told me that he made a left-hand turn into the O'Reilly's parking lot, which then the crash occurred when he was making the turn.
And so, just to clarify, could you mark on the exhibit the path of his vehicle per what he had told you?
Yes.
Thank you. And I'm now presenting what's marked as Exhibit 2.
Mr. Willis, this is Exhibit 2. He's going to ask the police officer about this exhibit as well.
Okay. No, that's my truck, or it was my truck.
Sergeant Miller, I've just handed you what's marked as Exhibit 2. What is it?
It is a pickup truck.
Does this image does it refresh your memory in any way?
Yes, it does.
Do you recall how does this refresh your memory?
Just by seeing the truck, I remember that it's Mr. Willis's truck.
And does this photograph fairly and accurately reflect the truck as it appeared on July 11, 2020?
Yes.
Do you recall who took the photo?
I do not recall.
Your Honor, I move to admit Exhibit 2 into evidence.
Do you have any objections? The city prosecutor is asked to move Exhibit 2 into evidence. Do you have any objections?
Well,
Hang on. Do you have any?
I'm just wondering, so this is a side view of my truck, but it doesn't show the damage to my truck.
Okay, but what's your basis for your objection to admitting into evidence?
Yeah, that is my truck, for sure.
Okay. Based upon what I've heard, the court will accept the admission of Exhibit number 2.
Thank you, Your Honor.
That's where it is.
Sergeant Miller, I've just handed you what's been marked as Exhibit 3. Do you recognize it?
I do, yes.
What is it?
Mr. Willis's truck.
And what is in the background?
In the background is Highway 51.
And is there anything on the highway?
Yes, there's some orange traffic barriers.
And does the photograph fairly and accurately reflect the front of the truck as it appeared on July 11, 2020?
Yes, it does.
Thank you. I move to admit Plaintiff's Exhibit 3 into evidence.
Mr. Willis, any objection to moving Exhibit 3 into evidence?
No objections, but when do I ask a question, or, when do I wait for him to get done and then come back and then?
Yeah, exactly. You wait
Okay,
till the
all right,
prosecutor's done, and then you can ask your
Okay.
questions. Okay, Exhibit 3 is admitted.
Sergeant Miller, I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 4. What is it?
Appears to be the damaged front end of the truck.
Does this photograph fairly and accurately reflect the damage to the truck as it appeared on July 11, 2020?
Yes, it does.
Now, is this, in your experience, is this damage consistent with someone making a left-hand turn across Highway 51 into O'Reilly Auto Parts?
It's consistent with somebody essentially running into something with the front of the truck.
Understood. And does this, in your, and Your Honor, I move Plaintiff's Exhibit 4 into evidence.
Mr. Willis, any objection to admitting 4 into evidence?
Objections, Your Honor. I'm glad to see this stop here. This
Okay. Thank you. Exhibit 4 is admitted.
thing.
Now, Officer Miller, I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 7. What is it?
It's the picture of a damaged vehicle from the other vehicle in the crash.
And this vehicle, and do you recall who the owner of the vehicle is?
I do not recall the name, however, the owner is in the picture there.
Understood. And for clarity, could you describe what he's wearing?
Appears to be wearing a gray shirt, black and gray shorts, and a hat.
Now, Your Honor, I move to admit Plaintiff's Exhibit 7 into evidence.
Mr. Willis, any objection to moving Exhibit
No
7?
objections. No, sir, I do not.
Exhibit 7 is admitted.
Now, Sergeant Miller, did you assess the damage? Excuse me, Sergeant Miller, after speaking to Mr. Wills, what did you do next?
I do not recall. I believe I did, however, inspected both the vehicles.
And was the damage consistent with an accident?
Yes.
And was the damage consistent with what Mr. Wills had informed you?
Yes.
And did you speak to anyone else at the scene?
I don't recall.
Did you speak to Officer Joseph?
I did, yes.
And do you recall what you told him?
I don't recall.
Do you recall anything Officer Joseph told you?
I would imagine we talked about the crash.
And what is the what's the, excuse me, scratch that. And Sergeant Miller, just to clarify, O'Reilly's Auto Parts is that public property?
It's a business, so it technically open to the public, yes.
And Mr. Willis informed you he was turning into the driveway of O'Reilly's Auto Parts?
Yep, the parking lot area.
Did Mr. Willis tell you if he had stopped before turning?
I don't recall that.
Thank you, Sergeant Miller. That's all I have for you.
Mr. Willis, now is the time that you can ask Sergeant Miller questions.
Okay, yes, I do. I've got a couple of questions. So I want to go back first to, oh, that is nothing. So I just want to be sure that I understand this. So he pointed out that this white building here is the, where I was turning into, the O'Reilly's, that was O'Reilly's?
Mr. Willis, you have to ask him
Can I
questions.
go- I mean, can I ask
Yeah,
him
you
or
can
show
approach,
him?
sure.
So I just wanted to be sure, is this the building where?
Yep, that's O'Reilly's, and
There's
that's,
no O'Reilly's or nothing parked there until that's why I don't understand the sign. And of course, on this particular picture, the barriers aren't there.
correct, yep, so that's O'Reilly's, and that's Highway 51 here.
Okay, all right, so, and actually, I don't need to go back to my truck, but can I just ask you this, let's see, is it this one? Okay, off this exhibit number 3 right here, right? Okay, so would you say that these barriers right here are up or are they down and consistent with the other ones that are all up?
Are we talking about the thin ones here?
Yeah, right here, see that little area
So it
right
does,
there?
yep, so it does appear that there is one down there, correct?
Correct.
Yep.
Okay, so, all right, that was yours, this one's mine. Okay, let me go to my, look at this one. I gotta be sure about this, because this is my. Okay, and so, Officer Miller, or Mr. Miller, were you the fellow that actually talked to me when I first approached you, when you fellas came on the scene?
That I don't recall if I was the first one to talk to you or not.
Because what I'm wondering is, when I talked to either Mr. Brocky or, I think it was Sammy, I don't recall his last name, but they said that he told me that I admitted to this being my fault, and I did not admit to that. And when I left the scene of this, here, let me
Mr. Willis,
a little bit.
Mr. Willis, if you want to just ask questions, you'll have a chance to testify later then, so.
Okay, all right. So my main thing is knowing that you seen where the barrier was down, because I think what I'm charged with is making an illegal left-hand turn, correct?
Correct, Mr. Willis.
Okay, and so I guess to backtrack a little bit, Your Honor, so I'm not, you read that making
No, now's the time to ask questions. You're kind of really discussing that. So if you have any questions for Sergeant Miller, now would be the time.
Okay, all right. So, did I admit to you in any verbal way that this accident was my fault?
That I don't recall.
Okay. Really, that's all do you recall the condition of the other driver?
Do I recall the condition of the other driver?
Yes.
Yes, I do.
And what condition was that?
He was arrested for driving while impaired.
Okay. I don't have any more questions, I reckon, that I can think of right off.
Mr. Brocky, do you have anything on rebuttal?
Yes, I do, Your Honor. Just a few quick questions. Sergeant Miller, you testified that Mr. Wills did not admit that he was at fault, correct?
Correct.
But did Mr. Wills say he was not at fault?
I can't recall that either.
And to restate, what was the conversation you had with Mr. Wills?
When I talked to him, it had been about the accident and what happened.
And what did he tell you?
Essentially, probably what happened. However, I don't recall the exact conversation off the top of my head.
Did he tell you he was turning into O'Reilly's Auto Parts?
Yes.
Was he, and he was traveling eastbound?
Correct.
Did he mention the crash?
Yes, he did.
Do you recall what direction the other car, he said the other car came from?
I don't remember if you mentioned that or not.
Do you recall what direction it came from?
The other car would have been coming westbound.
No further questions. Thank you.
Mr. Willis, based upon those questions, do you have any other questions? Mr. Brocky just had some rebuttal questions. Do you have any questions regarding what was just asked?
So you don't quite recall our first initial conversation when I first approached you, and we started to discuss what had happened, and I had said that you don't recall that conversation when we first spoke, when I first approached you and started to explain or give you my version of what was going on?
I remember we had a conversation. I just don't remember the exact words of what we spoke about.
Right.
Correct.
Well, then that really, the conversation doesn't really mean it, because that was the basis of.
Right, okay. All right,
So,
any
I
other
guess that's-
questions? You have any other questions for Sergeant?
No,
Miller?
sir, I do not.
All right, thank you, Sergeant Miller, for your testimony. You're excused.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for your time, man.
Thank you.
So, say, do you have any other witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. The city calls Officer Craig Joseph to the stand. Craig Joseph, Mr. Rose.
Oh.
Okay, Mr. Joseph. I might apologize, I should have been ready. Okay. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right. Please be seated. State your name for the record. Now, Officer, or Mr. Joseph, our defendant cannot hear very well, so you'll really have to speak directly into the microphone then.
Okay.
Can you, and Mr. Willis, if you can't hear us,
I can hear, I heard him say, yeah.
okay. So, Mr. Joseph, you could state your name and for the record.
Yeah, my name's Craig Jolseth. It's C-R-A-I-G. Last name's J-U-L-S-E-T-H.
Okay. Me a question witness, Mr. Brodke.
Good evening, Officer Joseph.
Good evening.
Officer Joseph, what do you do for a living?
I'm a police officer for the city of Stoughton.
And how long have you worked in that capacity?
I've been here since 2018, so approximately going on 5 years.
And what are some of your general job duties?
Just patrolling the city, responding to crime, calls for help.
Have you ever responded to a collision?
I have.
A motor vehicle collision, that is. Are you trained in responding to motor vehicle collisions?
I am.
And could you please describe that training?
We go through extensive training through the police academy, as well as continued on-the-job training, responding to all different sorts of collisions.
And how many collisions have you responded to?
Quite a few. Probably 75, 100, I don't know. Quite a few.
And do you recall if you were on duty on July 11th, 2020?
I was.
Do you recall responding to any dispatch calls on that date?
Yes.
Any in the early evening?
Yes.
Now, could you describe that call or the calls that you received in the early evening?
I know specifically on the date the call we're here for would be a two-car collision, explained as unknown injuries that occurred in the 800 block of West Main Street, city of Stoughton.
No, where is the 800 block?
It is.
Excuse me. Are there any surrounding businesses?
Yeah, so it would have been right in front of the O'Reilly Auto Part store. I'm sorry, maybe it's the 1600 block. I'm sorry.
And do you recall the roadway in front of that?
Yes, it's Highway 51 or West Main Street.
And in the summer 2020, was there any construction on that street?
There was a lot, yes.
Could you please describe the construction?
Yeah, so it's a four-way roadway, 2 lanes eastbound, 2 lanes westbound. At that current time, they had closed the eastbound lanes, so the westbound lanes became a one-way traffic. The interior lane or exterior lane would be westbound, the interior would be eastbound.
Thank you. And was there anything separating the lanes?
Yes, lots of tall orange construction pylons.
And were these pylons noticeable?
Very noticeable.
Do you recall any signage on the road?
There was signage. I don't recall exactly what it would have said.
Now, what did you see when you arrived at O'Reilly's?
I arrived at O'Reilly's and saw some debris in the westbound lane of US Highway 51, and inside the entrance to the O'Reilly parking lot, a damaged Honda Civic, another vehicle right behind that, and a pickup truck just on the west side of the parking lot.
Did you speak to anyone at the scene?
I did.
Now, were the owners of the vehicles present?
They were.
Do you recall who the owners were?
I do.
And who was the owner of the Honda Civic?
Would you like full name or initials or?
Initials is fine.
The initials are KS.
And who was the owner of the truck?
That would be Mr. Willis here.
And did you speak to either owner?
I would have spoke to both owners to assess injury.
Do you recall your conversation with Mr. Wills?
I don't think I had much of a conversation with Mr. Wills.
Did you speak to anyone else present on the scene?
I did.
Who did you speak to?
I spoke to the driver of the other vehicle as well as a independent witness that was traveling behind Mr. Wills.
And what direction was Mr. Wills traveling?
He was headed eastbound.
Now, in front of you should be Exhibit 3.
The number in the bottom right?
Yes.
Okay.
What is it?
That is a picture of the pickup truck belonging to Mr. Wills.
And is there any damage evident on this vehicle?
There is damage to the front passenger corner bumper there.
And thank you. And in the background, could you describe the background of the picture?
Yes, behind it is US Highway 51. There is the tall orange construction pylons, and then behind that would be the large orange construction barrels, and behind that the bank, Blackhawk Community Credit Union.
And if you were traveling eastbound on Highway 51 on July 11th, 2020, would you have to cross through the orange barriers?
Yes, you'd have to cross through those tall orange pylons. That was dividing the east and westbound lanes at the time.
Thank you. And Officer Joseph, could you turn your attention to what has been marked as Exhibit 7?
Okay.
What is it?
It is the other vehicle involved in the collision. Myself and the driver of that vehicle.
Now, Officer Joseph, did you speak to Officer Miller? Or Sergeant Miller at the time?
I did.
And you did end up citing or ticketing Mr. Wills, correct?
I did, yes.
Do you recall for what?
A illegal or improper failure to yield left turn. So left turn.
Is the damage shown in Exhibits 3 and 7 consistent with a failure to yield left turn at that time?
Yes.
Officer Joseph, that's all I have for you. Thank you.
Mr. Willis, now is your time to ask questions of Officer Joseph, if you have any.
Yeah, I just wanted to reconfirm, officer. So in, let's see, number 3.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm looking at the back by where the barrels are and the pylons are standing up and such. So I'm wondering, do you notice that some of those pylons are indeed down?
I do see that.
Okay. And so, okay, thank you for answering that. So the other thing I was going to ask, you don't remember our initial conversation when, I think when you first pulled in, I approached you and we kind of discussed my side or what I thought had happened or what had gone on. Do you recall that conversation at all?
Not the specific details. I know I would have asked whether or not you were injured, And
Correct.
both of you stated no, and then my attention at the time then was pulled to the other driver, as I believe you stated you were fine and your truck had minimal damage compared to the other vehicle.
Correct, and that was in fact true. So then, let me ask you, so how did you derive to the fact that, because you didn't issue me the ticket on the spot, you mailed it to me later? And so, really, when I left the scene, I wasn't, so I'm wondering why you mailed the ticket later, and then on the spot, I wasn't discussed, or it wasn't talked about that maybe that I had done something, or something illegal, or something wrong.
Sure, so I was the one logged into the program and issued the citation. Based on the totality of the other driver and the condition and what I had to focus on there, you would have been waiting for that citation. And I do believe there was a conversation between either myself and you or Sergeant Miller and yourself stating that instead of you waiting, you could get it in the mail, and you did request that.
Yeah, well, and then maybe I didn't hear, but so I thought you and I had that conversation. Anyways, you said there was another person, another witness or another gal that would stop that had spoke to you, and what did she tell you and talk to you about? Am I allowed to ask that, or?
Sure, you're allowed to ask that.
Yeah, so that would have been the caller of the crash, the person that reported it. Yep. So, and that caller had advised me that they had witnessed it, that they were traveling behind you.
Correct.
So also traveling eastbound, and stated that you had went over the orange pylons towards the O'Reilly's last second into the oncoming lane, causing the collision.
Okay. Did she mention that I was at a dead stop and that when I stopped, she had almost ran into me?
She did not.
Okay.
No.
So did she tell you mention that my vehicle was at a dead stop?
Nope.
Okay. Did I mention to you when we were talking about what had happened, was there any discussion about me being stopped or how fast I thought that fellow was going or anything like that?
I don't recall the specific details of that conversation.
Well, because I was a little surprised. I got the ticket in the mail and we didn't talk more about it. Okay. I guess I don't have any more questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Brodke, any additional questions?
No, I do not.
redirect?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. Thank you, Officer Joseph. You may be excused.
Thanks, ma'am, for your time.
Mr. Brodke, do you have any other witnesses?
No, I do not.
Okay. Mr. Willis, now is the time that you can, before I proceed, you offered exhibits 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7. 2, 3, 4, and 7 have been admitted into evidence, but exhibit 1 was offered but not received. Would you like to offer exhibit 1 into evidence?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. I offer exhibit 1 in evidence.
Mr. Willis, any objection to moving exhibit 1 into evidence? That was, exhibit 1 is a picture of the overview. Do you have any objection to that being offered into evidence?
Oh, no, I don't.
Okay.
No, sir, I don't.
Okay. Exhibit 1 is admitted. Okay. You indicated to me, Mr. Brodke, that you don't have any other further witnesses.
Yes, the city rests this case.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Willis, now is the time to present your testimony. Do you have any witnesses to testify on your behalf?
I do not, sir.
Would you like to testify on your own behalf?
Well, I'll give a statement. That's the best I got.
Well, okay, so what I'd like to do is, that's a good way of doing it because there's no question and answer session. Why don't you stay there? If you could stand and raise your right hand and repeat after me. And not repeat after me, just affirm this. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
So help me God.
All right. You may be seated. Let me make sure. I don't think I had the quite. Make sure I get the. Let me repeat the oath. If you could stand again, I left some words out. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do, sir.
Okay, great. Why don't you have a seat, and then you can tell it in your statement to me then.
Okay. Well, I guess the only thing I can say was I was at a dead stop. Yes, I had started to turn into that, into the O'Reillys. I was at maybe 700 feet before that, I was at a stoplight in front of Walgreens, and I needed to make a left. I had no idea where I was going. All the previous driveways had signs saying that there was you were not allowed to make a left-hand turn. But as I was sitting at that stop line, I observed at that area, and I believe that was Walgreens parking lot that was actually across from O'Reilly's. I can't tell it from this picture, but I believe that's what it was, because they had closed it off at that point. Anyways, so the construction was going on, and I needed to make a left. I didn't have any idea where I was going. I'm not from Stoughton, and so I was kind of a little nervous. And so I was driving pretty slow, trying to figure out where I could make a left-hand turn carefully and comfortably. And the person behind me was riding me pretty hard or staying really close to my, even though I was only trying to drive like 20 miles an hour, so I couldn't make a safe left-hand turn. And so as I glanced in my mirror, and I looked down the road, see where that other fellow was coming, and I quick glanced in my mirror to see how close the person behind me was, and she was quite close, and I bumped my brake, and by the time I looked back, that fellow had already traveled probably over, I'll say a block and a half, I'll say, and so I realized he was coming much faster than I anticipated, so I came to a dead stop. Yes, I was over the barrier, but as I sat there and watched him, and I think he stated he never even touched his brakes, and he smashed right into me. I felt there was plenty of time for him to stop or even deviate around me in that area before he hit me. He told me he never even touched his brakes. I said, I watched you for 6 or 8 car lengths, and at 25, you should have easily been able to stop. That's really all
I don't want to cut you off. Does that conclude your testimony? Does that conclude your testimony? You have anything else to tell me?
And when I approached that officer, I had said that to that officer that that guy was really flying. He was coming really fast. If he would have been me, he was coming super fast. And that's I felt if he wasn't impaired, he probably would have stopped and avoided the whole accident. I guess that's all I really had to say about it, Your Honor. All along the way, there was signs saying there was no left-hand turn, but at this particular place, the barriers were down, and there was not a sign there saying there was no left turn. And so I felt like that was an okay place to turn. The barrier things were down there, and I had seen a car turn just previously to me before I had got to that intersection to make that turn, and so I thought that was a safe place to actually make a left-hand turn.
Okay. All right. Mr. Willis, anything else?
No, sir, I guess
Okay.
that's...
So at this time, I'm going to allow the city attorney to ask you questions under cross-examination. So he's going to ask you questions and then just answer them as best as you can.
Okay.
Mr. Brock, you may proceed.
Your Honor, the city has no questions for Mr. Wills.
Okay, thank you.
No question? Oh, okay.
All right. Mr. Willis, do you have any additional witnesses?
No, sir, I don't.
Mr. Brocky, do you have any rebuttal witnesses?
No, we do not.
Okay. We'll close the evidence at this time. We'll proceed to closing arguments. Mr. Brocky.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, Mr. Wills was cited, excuse me. Ms. Wills was cited for failure to yield when entering an alley or driveway from highway pursuant to Wisconsin statute section 346.18 sub 7 sub A. That statute reads, the operator of any vehicle intending to turn left into an alley or private driveway across the path of any vehicle approaching from the opposite direction shall yield the right-of-way to the vehicle, that being the vehicle traveling from the opposite direction. The testimony here provided by Officer Joseph, Sergeant Miller, and Mr. Wills speaks for itself. Mr. Wills was operating a vehicle. He admits that he was traveling eastbound down U.S. Highway 51. He was attempting to turn left. He ultimately did make a left turn into a private driveway, that being that of O'Reilly's Auto Parts. While he was making that turn, he collided with a vehicle approaching from the opposite direction. Mr. Wills did not stop for this vehicle. This accident happened in Stoughton. And Mr. Wills himself is here present and has testified as much. Your Honor, each of the elements of this offense has been met, and the city rests this case.
Thank you, Mr. Brocky. Mr. Willis, this is your chance for a closing argument. You can provide a summary of this case, why I should, why you believe I should find you not guilty.
Again, I guess my only statement is I was at a dead stop when that fella hit me.
Okay. Okay.
I was stopped. I was across that barrier, but I was at a dead stop and that guy piled into me.
Okay. Mr. Brocky, anything?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was aware that there was another gal as a witness. I guess I didn't know that because I would have called her or had her be here because she was right behind me and she, like I said, she almost rear-ended me because I stopped so fast because that guy was coming so fast that I knew I had to stop. It didn't matter. He kept on coming. That's really all I have to say, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Brocky, anything on rebuttal?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. All right. So Mr. Brocky set forth the standards for failure to yield at failure to yield while entering an alley or driveway from the highway. Now, this is my decision. So I have before me Exhibits 1, which is an aerial view. Exhibit 2, which is a picture of Mr. Willis's truck. Picture 3 is a picture of Mr. Willis's truck with looks like a dented front bumper. Picture 4 is a more close-up view of a bumper, and then picture 7 is a Honda Civic. So I have also the testimony of, let's see, so Sergeant Willis, now with the Department of Natural Resources. The court finds that Sergeant Willis really didn't remember anything about this incident. So I'll note that today is August 17th, 2022. This accident occurred on July 11th, 2020, so it's over 2 years old. We'll note for the record that July 2020 was at the height of COVID. This court was closed with it's been a while since we've had the hearing, but my impression of this from the witnesses was that Sergeant Miller didn't really remember a whole lot about this accident. Now, Officer Joseph, testified that he spoke to the other driver, spoke to Mr. Willis briefly. There's a lot of inadmissible hearsay in this case. There was talk about a complaint about something that Mr. Willis abruptly made a left-hand turn. The problem that I have is that's inadmissible hearsay. I'm going to disregard all that evidence because Mr. Willis didn't have the right to cross-examine that person. I don't have there's no way to judge the veracity of that anonymous witness's statements. I like Mr. Willis said, it could be a person behind him, it could be somebody else. I just don't have that person, so I'm going to disregard that. Now, Mr. Willis also talked about what other people stated at the incident. That's also inadmissible hearsay. Because it doesn't matter what everybody else said. The only person whose out-of-court statement would be stated would be Mr. Willis's. Mr. Willis testified that he had a stop, brought out during cross-examination. The other driver was used initials only, was apparently cited for OWI. I don't know what the result of that would be. But the only testimony I have for this case is Mr. Willis stopped, made another stop, and it plowed into me. I don't have any other evidence. I have some pictures, but without any testimony as to what happened with those pictures, other than there was damage to 2 cars. I don't really have any corroborating evidence about improper left-hand turn. So from what I've gathered, there's really no evidence that Mr. Willis made an improper left-hand turn. So based upon the evidence I have before me, in like the only statement I have is that Mr. Willis said he followed the traffic laws. I know there was construction and all that, but I haven't really seen how that came into play for the citation. So based upon the evidence before me, I'll make the finding that the city has not met its burden by clear, satisfactory, and convincing evidence that Mr. Willis failed to yield while entering an alley driveway from a highway. So consequently, if it's left up to this court, the citation is dismissed. Now, Mr. Willis, the city has 20 days to appeal this ruling. So if they decide to appeal this ruling, they'll inform me and they'll inform you. They have a right to appeal my ruling to the Dane County Circuit Court and try this either on the record or based upon a de novo hearing, which is start all over again. But as it stands right now, the court is dismissing the citation against you.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So,
Oh, thank you.
well, I'm making the ruling based upon the evidence presented. So, but if there is an appeal, you'll get notice of that.
Thank
So,
you, sir.
okay. Anything else from the city?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Anything else from you, Mr. Willis?
No, sir.
Oh, actually, what is your current address? We'll send you the dismissal notice of that.
640 Barnham Street, apartment number 7.
Can you spell that?
Farnham, Barnham Street, apartment number 7, Columbus, Wisconsin, 53925.
Okay. We'll send you notice of the dismissal, and then if we receive anything from the city has your address that you can mail you can mail any appeal notice to him as well.
Will do. Thank
Okay.
you, Your
Thank
Honor.
you. That concludes this case. Thank you.
Thank you. Y'all have a good rest of your night. Thanks, Mary. Nice meeting you, Mr. Walsh.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Thank you, everybody. Court's adjourned.